It's quite an honor for me to be introducing a man who needs no introduction. In 1952, while still a doctoral student at the University of Chicago, Harry Markowitz published what was to become, according to the late Peter Bernstein, quote, "the most famous insight in the history of modern finance." That would be modern portfolio theory, or the concept of portfolio diversification, the basis of Harry's 1990 Nobel Prize in Economics. But what might be considered a lifetime achievement for most of us was just a beginning for Harry. Since publishing his seminal works on portfolio theory more than 50 years ago, he went on to develop sparse matrix techniques for solving very large optimization problems. He also designed and supervised the development of SimScript, a programming language used for computer simulation. In 1989, he received the prestigious John von Neumann Prize for his work in these areas. More recently, Harry began to apply his insight about portfolio management and computer programming to a very basic but often vexing question. How do we determine the proper savings rate, asset allocation, and investment goals for an event, namely retirement, that is years or even decades away and dependent on many unpredictable variables? Harry taught for many years at Baruch College right here in New York. He's currently the adjunct professor of finance at the Rady School of Management at UC San Diego and co-founder and chief architect of Guided Choice, an advisor to 401k managed accounts. Harry, we believe that your achievements in the field of retirement planning rank alongside your other achievements, and we're pleased to be honoring you with this award.
The Wharton-Jacobs Levy Prize for Quantitative Financial Innovation, awarded every other year, recognizes individuals who have undertaken outstanding quantitative research that has contributed to an important innovation in the practice of finance. It is our hope that the award's recipients will, over time, constitute an elite group of scholars and practitioners who have had a transformative impact on finance. Membership in that group begins today with this inaugural award to Harry Markowitz. No one can doubt the contributions Harry Markowitz has made to both theory and practice as the father of modern portfolio theory and the inventor of SimScript. They have become basic tools for quantitative portfolio construction and dynamic computer simulation. The Wharton-Jacobs Levy Prize recognizes Harry's contributions to the quantitative management of individual retirement portfolios. His work in this area replaces the guesswork and rules of thumb that used to guide pre- and post-financial retirement decisions. Now, such decisions are informed by data and computer modeling, considering a broad range of parameters, including investor age, savings, consumption needs, and income before and after retirement. The concepts behind Harry's game of life simulation have been embraced by the retirement advisory industry. We have all benefited professionally from Harry's insights on portfolio theory. Now we can benefit personally from his insights on retirement planning. How fitting that the first Wharton-Jacobs Levy Prize goes to a man of such distinction and impact. Thank you, Harry, and congratulations.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, yes, show them the product. My Nobel medallion, the real one, is gold, and it's in a vault. I think it's in a vault. We haven't looked at the vault for many years. And there's a brass imitation. This is real silver. I think I'm going to put it in a vault maybe or someplace. But this is gorgeous, isn't it? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. And one more, 1, 2. Thank you.
Thank you much. I'll take 1 minute of acceptance speech and 19 minutes of my latest new idea. Because, Del, 60 years, let's go over and done with. Let's talk about the next 60 years. Okay? Now, first I want to thank Bruce and Ken for the, endowing and so on. And I want to thank the committee that picked me, which includes Bruce and Doug and I know Mark Kritzman and Andy Lowe and Enos. Some of these are my close friends. So that's that's how I got it. I have my close friends as part of the committee. Anyway, so thank you for this award, which I accept, and that's my acceptance speech. Now, let me give you a little background to a paper which I hope has legs. I hope it's the first paper in another long march. In 1999, Sherrod Brubeau, who's the CEO of Guided Choice, told me, flew down with her lawyer from Silicon Valley, met in the Harry Markowitz company conference room. She explained that she wanted to go into the 401k advisory service business like Bill Sharp and in his financial engines, but with a different business plan, doing managed accounts instead of just giving advice like financial engines did then. Now everybody gives managed accounts. I expressed a great interest in her project, and especially this notion of having a decision support system that uses a simulation to help plan the future. And I gave her a copy of this Individual versus Institutional Investing, Markowitz 1991, which Bruce referred to and cited. I explained that it had in it something called a game of life computer simulation, a proposal, an outline, a suggested game of life computer simulation that included a family's health, housing, educational achievement plan, skill set, social security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, the context that financial planners have to worry about in advising how much you should save and so on and so forth. We are not very good at all at the operations research of financial planning. I mean, okay, we can get efficient frontiers, but there's a lot more to financial planning. There's a bigger context. And how can we develop techniques that will help that? So I proposed the Guided Choice I did not suggest that anybody in their right mind try at this stage to develop a complete game of life model. So the notion of game of life is not new. There's a Milton Bradley game which I have on my desk on a table at work called Game of Life, and it has all these decisions in it. You make it as you go along, you draw little cards and so on. But I was proposing something a little bit more serious with simulation and so on, and data and things like that there. Rather, I propose this Game of Life model be a North Star towards which we direct our model building. That's our goal in the long run. One I hope is not that long. Maybe the long run is essentially a long run. Starting with the immediate objective of helping investors save for retirement. I wrote a paper at Bruce's invitation for the occasion called Computer-Assisted Portfolio Selection, Theory and Practice. It includes general information about the history and operations of Guided Choice itself, but it discusses 3 technical questions which were worked out by the Guided Choice research and development team. You'll see that there are many technical questions. There's no end of use for a theoretician in practice, but there's three that I pick out because not only were they needed in the development of guided choices, two products. We first one had guided savings, which had from now to your retirement. Now we have guided spending, which can start any time, but goes beyond your retirement. And they're both fun. It's also needed, as part of many things that would have to be developed to really be able to give good financial planning advice. So the topics that I wrote appear in the three sections of your technical paper under the heading the database design. Also utility functions. We heard today how important utility functions are, and I have one slide which summarizes how important utility functions are, but you already know from Bruce and Ken. General reason for struggling with issues like these three is first, as everybody knows, the devil is in the details. Huge projects invite huge disasters. Headline of New York Times: Sibelius thrust and firestone on exchanges. Essentially it says the Obamacare decision support system screwed up. And the final, don't start vast projects with half-assed ideas. Anyway, thank you. I usually try to keep my technical talks strictly non-political, but somehow with the New York Times having as headline the problems of Obamacare. Database design. I used what I now call the EASY, Entity, Attribute, Set, and Event View a System Description. This was actually from SimScript, as we'll see. But in order to tell you about, how this system, in general, let me say that with the Entity, Attribute, Set, Event View, you think of a system, a dynamic system, as having a status as of any instant in time, which is described in terms of what kind, how many of various kinds of entities, where these types of entities exist. And for a given entity of a given type, what are its attribute values? And what are the sets, who are the members of the sets that it owns, and what sets does it belong to? And that's the status description. I'll show you an example of status description. But they change it, but status changes at points in time we call events. And I'll show you, I'll tell you later that by SimScript 2, I thought of this as describing not only the status of a simulated world, but the status represented in the database of a database world. And here's an extract, with the permission of Sherry Grabeau and her lawyers, from an extract of just a piece, part, 33 pages. We'll go through quickly without much detail. But I want to show you what it really looks like. Of the entity, attribute, and set descriptive table of guided choice. So we have first column, entity types of various kinds, person, and we'll see other things, accounts and portfolios and positions. And a given person has attributes like ID, last name, first name, middle name, social security, and so on and so forth, retirement age, and so on. It has its own sets, like a given participant, person is a participant, or is a participant spouse, reason for entry in the he owns a set of dependents, which includes a kind of thing called a dependent. We have a thing called GC accounts, plural, that's a set, and it calls kinds of things called accounts and so on. So a dependent has a name, a birth date. There's another interesting thing called a planned disbursement. This is you tell the data, the record keeper who gets what, when, and so on. More interesting, this is actually a very long list, you'll see. We have an entity type called account, and it has various, What's the participant? That points to a person. What's the plan? Who's the sponsor? The name of the corporation that's the plan sponsor, etc. Accounts, whether this is a highly compensated employee. The world is full of details. Every account owns a set of portfolios, just to not take too long. Every portfolio owns a set of positions. Every position has a security type. It points back to who it has a security type and an amount and so on. That's an extract from the actual entity attribute and set description of guided choice. By SimScript 2, as I mentioned before, it struck us that this entity attribute and set description was applicable to databases as well as simulated systems. This entity attribute set event methodology view has been used for a great variety of complex dynamic systems. There is an article on SimScript in the Encyclopedia of Computer Science and Technology, which is a little hard to get to. It can be used as a planning tool even when programs are not written. So there's in SimScript, so you use it as a planning tool even for simulation. I keep telling these guys over here, we have a book coming out, and I tell them to move their rear ends, because if you want a Nobel Prize, you're going to have to get that published. We're going to have to get a following. And when people are starting to use, dynamic simulations, we had entities like investors and portfolio analysis of traders and securities and order slips, and a security would we have one set called buy orders and another set called sell orders, and the prices were endogenous, and volatility therefore was endogenous. So if you want to have a model that has endogenous volatility, you got to go to Jacobs Levy website and download the model and play with it. This article, this 2004 article for the 30th anniversary of the Journal Portfolio Management, you'll see that it was conceived in terms of entities, actors, sets, and events, and then programmed in C++. In guided choice, it helped with the planning process. It was the way that area by area, we made sure that we were going to program what Sherry Grabeau conceived as this decision support system. So it was the specs by which it was programmed. And it aligned the plan with the implementation. It is the way it is implemented. It is implemented in an Oracle System R database, and it takes some work to get a System R database to understand about sets, but it's a solvable problem. But the concept was in terms of entities, attributes, and sets, and then the events keep updating the status of this system. Very often, the general plan, the overall specs for a big database, a big project, have no relationship to what's getting implemented. They're sort of vague and not precise. And what gets implemented is whatever the programmer, and you got lots of programmers, so you don't know who the programmer is, whatever the programmer thinks you meant gets implemented. And the connection between what gets implemented and what gets planned is very loose indeed. I'll only say one word about the importance of getting a good utility function. If you have a having a great model and a faulty utility function is like having a great car and then driving off in the wrong direction. So I agree with Bruce and Ken, well, you got to get the utility function right. But we have some technical discussions in there about the utility functions we use. Principal components analysis, all I'll say is the following sentence. We end up with autocorrelated Pearson type 4 principal component distributions. I need to attract others to this to make substantial future progress towards the game of life decision support system. So how am I going to attract people? Here's my plan. I'm writing a book. And it comes out Markowitz and Blay, 2013, Risk-Return Analysis, the Theory and Practice of Rational Investing. There's 4 volumes. They essentially bring up to date the basic assumptions of Markowitz 1959 are in the back of the book. The reason why my basic assumptions were in the back of the book is if I started the book with an axiomatic treatment of the theory of rational decision-making under risk and uncertainty, nobody with money would have read the book. But what volume 1 of the new book is, which is in print now, is like chapter 10 of the old book of 1959. It's rational decision-making single period, no odds, with applications to finance, but it has to do with anything. Volume 2, which I am now currently writing, includes this this game of life, among other things. Just other things that have to do with dynamics. So it's many period, known odds, and it's due at McGraw-Hill, March 31st, 2015. Volume 3, like chapter 12 of the 59 book, has to do with uncertainty and Bayes analysis and Black-Litterman and resample frontiers. But the Bayesian analysis, why we're all Bayesians, due at the McGraw-Hill 2017. Volume 4, like chapter 13 of the book, has further application considerations that don't. So that's due in March 31st, 2019. Now I'm 86 years old, so I'm sort of contracted out to age 91. I figure if I make it, well, first place, so far so good. I'm feeling fine, thank you. Making progress on volume 2. If I do complete all 4 volumes, will be largely due to Mrs. Markowitz dinners of lots of vegetables and a bit of fish, and that's my final advice on how to play the game of life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.